Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review for December 31, 2023. Today, we're talking with Benyamin Poghosyan. Welcome to the show, Benyamin.
Welcome, Benjamin.
Hello, Asbed. Hello, Hovik. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely the same here.
All right. 3 months after Azerbaijan's invasion of Artsakh Republic and the eviction of its remaining population, President in exile Samvel Shahramanyan has allegedly annulled his declaration of dissolution of the republic on January 1st, 2024, which he had made under duress to save civilian lives and essentially to ensure that the population of Artsakh is able to leave safely. There are a number of serious caveats to this story, however. First, the original document claiming to be that of the dissolution of Artsakh has never been officially published, and according to Artsakh law, a document has to be published in order for it to take effect. Shahramanyan had made the declaration in the middle of a brutal invasion and with hundreds of Armenians being killed, so definitely under duress. Even if this document was indeed what it was purported to be, legal analysts claim that it is invalid since besides being made under duress, the executive branch cannot legally make a decision to dissolve all other branches of government and terminate a country like it's a defunct business. So the recent news this week is about its annulment, but it comes from his advisor, Vladimir Grigoryan, and not Shahramanyan himself. And the following day, his advisor, Grigoryan, issued a statement indicating that what he had said previously was his own personal opinion. And by the way, he no longer is employed, or he no longer is Shahramanyan's advisor. And many people speculate that this was a result of strong backlash from civil contract, which we also saw publicly in parliament and elsewhere. People, civil contract people went crazy. Benjamin, what do you make of this crazy situation around this legal status of Artsakh, around this document? And what's your take on what happened this week?
Thank you, Hovik. Frankly speaking, situation is rather complicated. I fully agree with you that from the beginning, there were a lot of questions regarding the legality of September 28 decree to dissolve the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic. Especially no one saw that decree. I mean, no one saw any decree printed in the official paper with Mr. Shahramanyan signature or stamp or what is it. It was put, I think, on Artsakh information staff Facebook page, which itself create a lot of doubts that this decree was legal. But also what his advisor said like a week ago was that, okay, on October 19, when Mr. Shahramanyan signed another decree according to which some state officials will continue their work after October 1st, but without any salaries. And this decree automatically means cancellation of decree of the September 28. For me, this is also not very clear. So I am not a lawyer, so it will be challenging for me to say anything based on pure legal terms. But from like political or even from conventional wisdom point of view, I believe both the decree of dissolution of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic create a lot of doubt and a lot of questions, but also as a way which this decree was cancelled, if it was cancelled, also raises a lot of questions, which at the end of the day, if nothing happens within these upcoming hours and we'll enter 2024 with the current situation, then I think it will create a situation for perceptions, interpretations, and misinterpretations, because anyone who is interested, for whatever reason, to argue that there is no Nagorno-Karabakh Republic anymore starting January 1st, 2024, he may say this, and he may say, okay, look, guys, there was a decree, and there is neither decision of Supreme Court of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic to recognize September 28 decree as anti-constitutional. There is no decree signed by President Samvel Shahramanyan itself to cancel its previous decree. There is no session of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic Parliament to somehow declare this decree anti-constitutional or null and void. So if you, for whatever reason, would like to argue that starting from January 1st, 2024, there is no Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, you can do that. Simultaneously, if you, again, for whatever reasons, would like to argue that no Nagorno-Karabakh Republic exists, and at least until May 2025, Samvel Shahramanyan is a president and parliament is a parliament because they were elected in spring 2020 for 5-year terms. You can argue that, okay, Nagorno-Karabakh Republic still exists. So as of this moment, we are in uncharted waters, which again open ways or open a room for different kind of interpretations and misinterpretations. So this is my understanding. Of course, to put an end to any discussions that there is no Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, it would be much better either to sign concrete decree, annulling the decree of September 28, or maybe to convene the session of Supreme Court of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, and Supreme Court may declare the decree of Samvel Shahramanyan unconstitutional. If these steps would be taken, they will leave no room for different kind of interpretations, misinterpretations, or manipulations. Unfortunately, as of now, and I'm afraid there are few chances that anything will be done within these remaining hours of 2023, we will enter 2024 with these lingering questions about existence or non-existence, at least from pure legal terms, of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic.
Am I reading this right, that this decree, and it's basically Aliyev forcing Shahramanyan to sign this decree, was more meant for the Armenian audience and for those who might doubt, like for instance, for Pashinyan and his team, who can say that, well, Nagorno-Karabakh no longer exists, and it's meant to be debated on the political level and not on the legal level, because we talked to legal experts, and I think Aram Orbelian on our show said that he doesn't believe that this decree is legal and it couldn't be legal. So do you think that this is basically meant to appease the Armenian population and to basically stymie and convince the opposition that Nagorno-Karabakh itself is dissolved and no longer worth fighting for and struggling for?
Also on the punditry level and maybe even the troll level, because we have seen people on the Pashinyan side trying to raise the issue that Shahramanyan in 10 days lost Artsakh, and it was nothing to do with civil contract and Pashinyan. So I also think I kind of agree with you that maybe it was meant for the Armenian audience rather than a legal or international audience.
Which is kind of weird, because then we're also discussing it on our podcast, but which is why I feel like we shouldn't put too much attention to this, but maybe I'm wrong. But Benjamin, what do you think?
I would say that probably it has two audiences. I would not fully agree that it has nothing to do with international community or international actors, because at the end of the day, even for European Union, United States, Russia, or anyone who was, is, and will be involved in Armenia-Azerbaijan negotiations or Armenia-Azerbaijan relations, this degree of dissolution of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic gives them opportunity to say that, yes, of course, we believe that Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh, they have a right of return. They should be allowed to return to Nagorno-Karabakh. Their rights should be protected. But what rights? Rights as a ethnic minority. According to European laws, there is a special Council of Europe Convention or ethnic minorities. There are some other international conventions or international rules how any state should treat ethnic minorities, but nothing more. Which means that, okay, if Armenians would like to live in Azerbaijan as an Azerbaijani citizen, as an Armenian ethnic minority, having the right, I don't know, to have Armenian language schools in Saturday or Sundays, or to have Armenian language classes in Azerbaijani schools or whatever, please, yes, we believe that they should have that right, but there could be no discussion about political rights, about independence, etc., etc. So from international actors' point of view, at least those who would like to close up issue of Nagorno-Karabakh, hoping that this will somehow facilitate Armenia, Azerbaijan, and then Armenia-Turkey normalization, definitely this decree is important to close the chapter of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic as a political entity and shift the discussions to the point of right of Armenians in Azerbaijan as an Azerbaijani citizens. telling that, okay, yes, they have the right to return, but they have the right to return as Azerbaijani citizens and live there as Azerbaijani citizens of Armenian origin who should have some rights, I don't know, educational rights, some religious rights, like to have one church in Stepanakert along with one mosque, or etc. But of course, this is also in line with those in Armenia, and also, I believe, some in the government, who also believe that the Nagorno-Karabakh was the main obstacle for this Armenia-Azerbaijan normalization and then Armenia-Turkey normalization, which will provide Armenia some stable future for at least 10 or 20 years. It will be stable future, no direct threat of war, opening up of communications, additional trade, export-import via Azerbaijan, via Turkey, maybe with Azerbaijan, with Turkey, some Western money for so-called post-conflict settlement or post-conflict renovation or whatever. So in this case, yes, anyone who is interested to close the Nagorno-Karabakh chapter as a political conflict and to shift these discussions or the essence of conflict from politics into simply the area of human rights protection, this decree, or at least the fact that starting from January 1st, 2024, you can argue that Nagorno-Karabakh Republic is dissolved, and this, of course, legally, this could be debate, and we know that law is not a math, and one lawyer can argue this, another lawyer can argue that, but if there is no clear action to cancel or annul the September 28, 2023 decree, this allows anyone who is interested to see the Nagorno-Karabakh issue as an issue of political conflict or as a political conflict to be closed. This may serve a trump card for that.
Quite funny, tragically, of course, that all these international institutions who, after every single election, went to great lengths to say that they don't recognize the Republic of Artsakh, they don't recognize the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, would then say, you know what, we didn't recognize this republic before, but because the president of that republic signed a decree, now we recognize it. But of course, the republic is dissolved. But anyway, that's a little, a joke on my side. So Pashinyan, it's clear that Pashinyan and his government have washed their hands of Artsakh. They're not looking back ever since the defeat of the 44-day war. The man who once said Artsakh is Armenia, Yeverch, now wants you to believe that the case of Artsakh was doomed from the start. I mean, he has made many excuses for this. He has said that Artsakh issue was over from 1991, 1997, etc., etc. However, this news of Shahramanyan's annulment apparently put a spoke in their dreams of closing the Artsakh chapter out of their agenda. So last weekend, they lashed out and slammed Shahramanyan, calling him a displaced person, no different than his 100,000 or 150,000 compatriots, and that he and his Artsakh government pose a threat to Armenia, and that none of their actions on Armenian territory can have legal force. Over the last day, I think we also saw the news that his car, his motorcade, was stopped in Armenia because apparently, according to Armenian law, only only people protected by the state can have motorcades. So he shouldn't have a motorcade. Benyamin, why is the civil contract goon squad so freaked out about Shahramanyan's statement? Why are they dead set against the survival and functionality of the components of the state of Artsakh?
Okay, my understanding is that they desperately need some positive news after 4 years of non-stop catastrophes, like losing several wars, incursion into Armenia, occupied Armenian territory, thousands and thousands young people killed, and then ethnic cleansing of Nagorno-Karabakh and complete loss of Nagorno-Karabakh. So after all this, the government needs some positive news. And from their perspective, at least as I see it, maybe I'm wrong, but from their perspective, any document signed with Azerbaijan, which they may call a peace agreement, this could be a positive news because they may say the public that yes, the last 4 years, it was really terrible. We lost thousands of young people. We completely lost Nagorno-Karabakh. It's a terrible, but at least we now have a sort of peace agreement with Azerbaijan, which significantly decreases the chances of new wars, which significantly decreases the chances that your children, your boys who will be conscripted into army when they will reach say 18 years old will be killed in the border clashes or in whatever clashes. So there will be some stable future for Armenia for the decades, and also they hope that if this agreement is signed with Azerbaijan, probably Armenian-Turkey normalization will happen, border will open with Turkey. This will somehow boost Armenian economy, because Armenian economy was boosted in 2022, in 2023, mostly due to the war in Ukraine and significantly increase of trade with Russia, mainly due to this re-export to Russia. But these factors are becoming less and less significant. Like in 2022, we have some 13% of GDP growth. In 2023, this year, we'll have somewhere between 7 or maybe maximum 8% GDP growth. Definitely in 2024, it will be even less, maybe 4 or 5%, which means that this boost of economy due to the war in Ukraine will go down. So they need a positive news, and they need additional boost in economy somehow to tell people that, okay, we lost Artsakh, it's a terrible, but at least we secure peace and we secure some more or less economic development, the rising living standards, and etc. But to everything to happen, or at least to hope that this everything may happen, you need to sign some sort of paper with Azerbaijan and call it peace agreement. And probably Azerbaijan privately told them that any establishment of government in exile or parliament in exile or whatever in Armenia will be perceived from Azerbaijan as a crossing of red lines, and this will ruin any chances of having peace agreement. And if there is a no peace agreement, it means that there is a no positive news, and that at the end of the day, if not now, but in 2024 or 2025, more and more people will ask this question, okay, but why we gave up on Artsakh? Like why we lost part of our homeland where Armenians were living in the last millennia for thousands of years? We lost it for what? Like, if we lost it for nothing, like it's complete, it sounds like insane. So that is why I believe they are trying to do everything to have this paper signed with Azerbaijan and then sell it as a positive news, and somehow hoping that after this paper signed, there will be also opening of borders with Turkey, maybe some European investment, money, etc., like people will live a little bit better. And then people will say, okay, maybe it sounds cynical, but we lost Artsakh, but now we live economically better, and there is no threat of new war, no threat of additional young people killed. Then maybe people will accept this deal.
Pashinyan's cronies have all used the same terminology, that the remnants of the state of Artsakh pose a grave danger to Armenia's national security. Do you think that this comes straight from Aliyev, that if Pashinyan doesn't dismantle the state of Artsakh in Armenia, then Azerbaijan will attack? And what options does Armenia's government have in this situation?
I don't exclude that privately Aliyev transferred to Pashinyan either directly or maybe through some other diplomatic or other channels, that the continuation of Artsakh state institution activities in Armenia, Azerbaijan may perceive this as a casus belli, and if not to attack Armenia immediately, but Azerbaijan will stop negotiations immediately, telling that, okay, this is a clear territorial demand or violation of Azerbaijani territorial integrity, and Azerbaijan is stopping negotiations, blaming Armenia for ruining negotiations once more. And if Azerbaijan did this, then any moment he may attack, trying to blame Armenia for ruining negotiations or being absolutely non-constructive. I don't exclude that these type of messages were sent to Armenia. And again, because look, if another major escalation happens along Armenia-Azerbaijan border, even regardless of results, Azerbaijan will take additional heights, or Azerbaijan will take one village, Azerbaijan will take enclaves, or even Azerbaijan will enter Jermuk, or even after major escalation, no changes will happen on the ground. But another major escalation, this will significant blow to the current government, because indirectly they are trying to tell people that, okay, the existence of Nagorno-Karabakh was the call of permanent threat of war or permanent war for Armenia. So at the end of the day, a society should make a choice. Are you ready to live under permanent threat of war and under not only threat, but under like cyclical escalations with deaths, with fear, and etc., or you want a more or less stable and secure life. And the only way to have this more or less secure and stable life is give up on Nagorno-Karabakh, because as far as there is a Nagorno-Karabakh, there will always be escalations, big escalations, medium escalations, small escalations, and always there will be a threat of large-scale war, like another 44-day war. But if after giving up on Nagorno-Karabakh, and we all saw President Aliyev receiving military parade in Stepanakert, I think it was somewhere in November, with 0 Armenians. And even after that, now we have escalation against Armenians, then even the most like remote, like people who have nothing to do with geopolitics, or even people who does not have critical thinking, question will arise. Okay, guys, somehow we were told that as far as there is a Nagorno-Karabakh, we will have escalations and permanent threat of war. Yes, we are fed up with this. We want secure, stable life. We want to have at least minimal living standards or whatever. So we somehow accepted the loss of Nagorno-Karabakh. But okay, now there is no Nagorno-Karabakh, but again, we have escalation, we have war. And at that time, people would ask, okay, so either you cheated us, or your whole theory was wrong, but as a result of your lack of competence or for whatever reasons, we lost part of our ancient homeland. We significantly decrease or increase the vulnerability of Armenia, because from military point of view, Armenia with Nagorno-Karabakh in its 2019 borders and Armenia currently, Armenia is 10 times more vulnerable from military point of view, which means that the loss of Nagorno-Karabakh is not going to bring the era of peace, and this escalation will continue and threat of large-scale war remains. It means that Armenia is doomed, because without Nagorno-Karabakh, any large-scale war will have much more terrible complications for Armenia, because next large-scale war will not be fought somewhere in Akna, Jeragan, or Jebrail, Agdam, or whatever. Large-scale war will be fought in Goris, Jermuk, I don't know, Yeregnador. So this is very significant for this government somehow to prove that they were right, that yes, Nagorno-Karabakh was a main problem or main source of problems for Armenia. And I believe Prime Minister in one of his last press conferences, he said, yes, that Armenia spent 70 or 80% of its resources on Nagorno-Karabakh starting from early 1990s. But instead of doing this, Armenia should spend resources on Armenia. That is why Armenia now is poor country. That is why hundreds of thousands of Armenians are living like in poverty with, I don't know, $200 per month salary or whatever. All these because we spent resources on Nagorno-Karabakh. Now Karabakh is finished. We will spend our resources only in Armenia, and within several years, if we will not live like people live in Luxembourg or in United States, at least we will live like people live in Poland, for example.
I mean, that is obvious bullshit, Benjamin. I mean, I think we all know it, but I just want to close this topic. Just one question. The Armenian opposition supported hitherto Shahramanyan, even though some of them are also very uneasy because of his ambiguous stance about this annulment. What options do they have?
Okay, if you ask what opposition have, okay, apparently, I don't believe that they have like direct leverage on Mr. Shahramanyan, like to force him to tell, okay, make a concrete step which will finish with any misperception and which will end any potential manipulation regarding cancellation or not cancellation of your September 28 decree. I don't think they have direct leverage on Mr. Shahramanyan, but I think what leverage they have the leverage of to meet, discuss, and to convey their concerns, or at least to receive explanation from Mr. Shahramanyan, because maybe I don't see it, but maybe there are explanation according to which even current situation secures more or less the continuation of activities of state institutions of Nagorno-Karabakh. I don't know, but at least opposition has a chance to speak with Mr. Shahramanyan either convince him to take more clear actions to cancel his decree, or maybe receive more clear explanations why the current situation means cancellation of his decree, and the current situation will not open the door for different kind of misinterpretations and manipulations.
Let's turn our attention to last week when Azerbaijan responded to Armenia's negotiating positions. First, they stated that they would negotiate again in Washington if Biden waives Section 907, which prevents US military support for Azerbaijan. Then Aliyev's advisor, Hikmet Hajiyev, also made it very clear that a signed treaty is no guarantee of peace. And additionally, he proposed that border discussions should no longer gate a so-called peace treaty. Azerbaijan has come under a lot of pressure to come back to negotiations in the West. So this proposal is a clear effort to deflect that pressure by pretending that they're willing to negotiate, all the while removing Armenia's legitimate concerns off the agenda. And of course, Pashinyan's government signaled, yes, they're open to it. Benyamin, what's your assessment of this last round of so-called negotiations?
My understanding is that Azerbaijan now has a very clear position. They don't want any mediators, any facilitators. Brussels, Washington, Moscow, or whatever. They are telling, okay, guys, we should negotiate face-to-face. Nobody should be in the room. This is first. And second, they are trying to kick out any problematic issue from the so-called peace agreement, which will allow them, even after signing this paper, which anyone can call peace agreement or whatever, then if no problematic issues are solved in this agreement, I mean, for example, border delimitation and demarcation, not delimitation itself, but at least principles or maps. For example, if there is a no agreement and if it's not fixed in the peace agreement, that delimitation and demarcation will carry out based on maps of 1974 or 1979 or 1982. If it's not fixed, if there will be some vague statements that, for example, delimitation and demarcation will be done based on Soviet Union maps from 1974 until 1990 or 1991. This is one example. Then, immediately or 1 month after the signature of peace agreement, Azerbaijan will say, okay, I just found a map of 1987, and according to which, not only we do not occupy any Armenian territory around Djerbuk, Black Lake, or whatever, and not only Armenia should give up 8 enclaves, but also Armenia should give up, for example, part of Goris region, for example. And if Armenia says no, then Azerbaijan will say, sorry guys, if no, then I again will use military force to compel them to agree. So my understanding is this. Azerbaijan wants, first of all, direct negotiations. Second, they don't want anything in peace agreement regarding this dispute solving mechanism involving international arbitrage or any other countries. They are telling, okay, if you want dispute solving mechanism or if you want dispute solving commission, it should be commission comprised only of Armenians and Azerbaijanis, 2 Armenian and 2 Azerbaijani. But again, if any problem occurs, and then let's assume this commission meets 2 Armenians and 2 Azerbaijanis. 2 Azerbaijanis will say, yes, Armenia violated. 2 Armenians will say, no, we didn't violate it. Commission could not come to any conclusion. And then Azerbaijan may say, okay, unfortunately, I have to use force because Armenia violated peace agreement. So this is Azerbaijani position. Direct negotiations, no mediators, and we are not going to solve or fix any problematic issues in peace agreement. All these problematic issues, which will be discussed after signature of peace agreement, like on what maps delimitation and demarcation will take place.
Okay, what about Armenia's position then?
Okay, what about Armenia's position? Again, because according to my understanding, this government desperately needs something to be signed to somehow sell this to Armenian society, telling them, okay, I give up Nagorno-Karabakh, but at least I got this paper called peace agreement. Then I'm afraid that Armenian government may agree, and I think the key indicator is here. Azerbaijan hinted that they want foreign ministers to meet on Armenia-Azerbaijan border,
Right.
not in Washington, because we know that foreign ministers they have 2 meetings in Washington, May, June 2023, and the United States offered to meet in November 2023. Azerbaijan rejected. Then a high-level official from State Department went to Azerbaijan, Mr. O'Brien, on December 6th, met with President Aliyev, and there were some rumors that Azerbaijan agreed to have a meeting between foreign ministers in Washington in January 2024. But now, publicly, Azerbaijan is telling that, okay, United States should amend its position to again become a mediator or facilitator. But most importantly, why go to Washington? Why to fly like 10,000 kilometers if we can drive a few hundred kilometers and meet on Armenia-Azerbaijan border? So I believe we should wait until January 31, 2024. If Armenian and Azerbaijani foreign ministers meet somewhere in Armenia-Azerbaijan border in January, not in Washington, it means that Armenia accepted Azerbaijani's demands that the negotiation will continue without any mediators or facilitators. Because again, this government desperately needs some positive news. But the problem is, I don't want to sound like too pessimistic, but we all remember, okay, we don't remember, but we read that in 1938, when there was a Munich conference, the agreement was signed with Nazi Germany about Nazi Germany occupying part of Czechoslovakia. The UK Prime Minister Chamberlain, I believe, he went to London with this piece of paper and said, look, my fellow citizen, yes, maybe I did very bad thing for Czechoslovakia. Yes, I made concessions to Hitler, but I secured peace. So at the end of the day, I'm afraid we will have a situation when we will have some document signed, maybe in the first month of 2024, but document which will leave open all complicated issues. This document will be sold here in Armenia that, okay, do you remember that we, Armenian government, were speaking about agenda of peace, that we have an agenda of peace, and despite every terrible events, despite the ethnic cleansing of Nagorno-Karabakh of Armenians, despite Azerbaijani bad behavior, we were telling you that our will is unbreakable. We want agenda of peace, we want era of peace, and look, now I have this paper called Peace Agreement with, I don't know, 20 or 25 articles, but I'm afraid that this paper could have the same effect as the document which was signed in Munich conference in 1938.
I understand what you're saying, Benjamin, but I'm completely confused by what the government is doing. For example, Alen Simonian is saying that it's okay to not talk about the border. Ararat Mirzoyan is saying that the border discussions are important to them. What are they signaling to Azerbaijan? And how is it okay to negotiate for peace without borders or recognition of Armenia's sovereignty? Why don't they just sign a blank piece of paper, put two signatures on it, and say, we have a signed treaty, whatever it doesn't mean anything, apparently.
Okay, at the end of the day, maybe it will be the most honest way to do that. But again, my understanding is that, first of all, this government is confused because somehow they were sure, I don't know why, that after Karabakh chapter will be closed, Azerbaijan will sign peace agreement, maybe under the Western pressure. Turkey will normalize relation with Armenia, and they will say, okay, we reached peace, we are happy now, peace with Azerbaijan, normal relation with Turkey, Turkish and Azerbaijani borders are open, more export, more import, even Turkish money, Azerbaijani money, you can export to Azerbaijan, you can sell something to Azerbaijan, you can sell something to Turkey, Turkish money can come to Armenia, European money can come to Armenia, everyone will live happy. So they were sure about that. But then they were shocked when Aliyev said, okay, guys, after finishing Nagorno-Karabakh, I have no intention to even negotiate on Western platform. Rejecting to go to Granada, then Brussels, then Washington. Government was surprised because if you were sure that, okay, you will have a peace agreement signed in the Western platform by the end of 2023, and then President Aliyev is rejecting even to negotiate on the Western platforms, you are confused. But again, you need some positive news. And what you are telling, blank sheet of paper with signatures, this cannot be sold as a positive news. But any paper with some articles, even very basic things about territorial integrity or whatever, signed, this can be sold as a good news, telling that, okay, guys, look, we promised era of peace, we promised peace agenda, and we were successful despite all the obstacles, these terrible events in Nagorno-Karabakh, ethnic cleansing, etc., etc., etc. Which means that from this perspective, I'm afraid that government, okay, they already, I guess, accepted to launch bilateral negotiations because December 7th statement on Armenia supporting Azerbaijan's COP29 bid, and this release of 32 Armenian POWs and the release of these two Azerbaijani soldiers, one of them killed a civilian in Armenia. So our government already agreed for bilateral talks. Will they agree to completely say goodbye to any international platform? Again, let's wait until the end of January 2024. If at the end of January 2024, instead of having meeting between foreign ministers in Washington, we will have meeting between foreign ministers somewhere on Armenia-Azerbaijan border. It means that Armenia also accepted Azerbaijani demand to fully abandon any international platforms and have bilateral negotiations, which means that at the end of the day, they will also may accept Azerbaijani demands not to include in peace agreement any problematic issues. And at the end of the day, we will have a peace agreement. They will use this to sell it to Armenian society, telling that, look, guys, everything is nice. There is no threat of war. You will live happily and very soon with American money, European money, or even theoretically with trade with Azerbaijan and Turkey. Average Armenian will live like average Polish citizen, or I don't know, maybe average even German citizens. So be happy. Now happiness arrives. While from Azerbaijan perspective, they will have some agreement to show also to the West, telling that, okay, guys, we told you that why you are pushing forward these Western platforms. We told you that we can reach success also on bilateral trades. And then, because this agreement or this piece of paper will not solve any problematic issues, then Azerbaijan will again use threat and military force to push forward favorable solutions regarding maps, regarding enclaves, regarding its transportation routes or whatever.
Okay, Benjamin, the Russian peacekeepers this week made a statement, and there was some more media about them that they're still sort of, active in Artsakh. What are the Russia's objectives without any Armenians to watch over? What do you make of this news?
I believe that Russia has two objectives. First, to keep Russian peacekeepers there until November 2025, claiming that legally no one annulled November 10, 2020 trilateral statement. And according to this statement, Russian peacekeepers should be deployed in Nagorno-Karabakh at least until November 2025. And second, I believe Russia will be interested to organize at least partial return of Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians, even a few thousand people, to Nagorno-Karabakh to use their return or their existence there as a pretext or as a leverage to secure the deployment of Russian peacekeepers also beyond November 2025.
Okay. And the EU, US, France, and Russia have all stated that September did not close the chapter on Artsakh. Is there a convergence of vision for a future status of Artsakh, with or without independence, autonomy, or even Armenians?
Okay, I believe that from point of view of international community, including Russia, EU, I'm not sure about Americans, because I believe from American point of view, any reappearance of Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh may somehow validate the existence of Russian peacekeepers. And this idea that Russian peacekeepers should be kicked out from Nagorno-Karabakh became idea fixed for the United States, according to my understanding. But at least from Russian and European perspective, yes, it will be better if some Armenians will return to Azerbaijan, of course, without any status, but like to live in Azerbaijan as an Azerbaijani citizens, but Azerbaijan providing them with some basic rights for ethnic minorities. I think here probably European and Russian views are converging, because Europeans also would like to see some Armenians return to Nagorno-Karabakh to show that, okay, at least we somehow secured also partially secure the rights of Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians. So from this point of view, I believe we have some convergence between Russians and Europeans, because Russia is interested to see at least some Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians return to Nagorno-Karabakh, hoping to use their existence as a way to extend the deployment of Russian peacekeepers beyond November 2025, while Europe is interested. First, they believe that this is good for long-term security and stability of the region, because Europe believes that if no Armenians will come back to Nagorno-Karabakh, even if peace agreement is signed, and even if any other additional agreements are signed on delimitation and demarcation, you will not have a long-term stability and security in the region if zero Armenians returns to Nagorno-Karabakh. But if some returns to Nagorno-Karabakh, receive Azerbaijani passports, but not being, beaten or raped every day there, then this somehow will pave the way in a long-term perspective for more or less stable region.
So let's discuss Pashinyan's trip to St. Petersburg that happened last week, where he attended a summit of the EAEU. There was also a CIS summit the following day. One major achievement was that there was a sweeping free trade agreement between the EAEU and Iran, a preliminary a version of which was signed in 2019 under Armenia's leadership. Also, Armenia will assume the presidency of the EAEU in 2024, so it would have been very weird for Pashinyan not to be there. In the past 6 months or more, Armenia has pretty much boycotted Russian-led post-Soviet alliances, the CSTO, the CIS, the EAEU. And while Pashinyan's government has been slamming Russian-led alliances, Armenia's economic dependence on Russia is deep. A third of Armenia's economy and half of all exports depend on Russia. So when Russia raised technical difficulties at the Lars border checkpoint, Pashinyan basically got the invitation that he could not refuse to go to St. Petersburg. So what I'm seeing in this is basically Armenia is trying to put forth a policy of good economic relations with Russia and the EAEU while having sort of less military and security relations with Russia or Russian-led alliances. So actually, I wanted to ask you, does it make any sense for Armenia's leadership to diverge the country's security alignment away from its economic well-being and dependence, especially considering Russia's currently antagonistic relationship with the West?
Okay, I'm not sure that our government is capable to make such strategic calculations and choices to the diverging economy from security or vice versa. But my hope is that at the end of the day, our government understands that all this information or messages which were coming from the West, not only to Armenia, but to everywhere, that 2023 will mark the military humiliation of Russia in Ukraine, that Ukrainian troops will reach at least Azov Sea, or maybe even Crimea, that the Russian army will be destroyed and humiliated in Ukraine, and this will create domestic tensions in Russia. Russia will forget about South Caucasus and etc. I hope that our government understands that this was mostly complete bullshit, and Russia is not going to be militarily humiliated in Ukraine now, starting at least from November. Many Western experts and commentators are speaking about the vice versa possibilities that Ukraine or the West is going to be humiliated in Ukraine, which means that Russia will not decrease its presence in South Caucasus, because if Russia is not going to be humiliated and defeated in Ukraine, then while Russia will lose or decrease its presence in South Caucasus, especially when South Caucasus is becoming more and more important for Russia to have direct access to Iran and via Iran to India, and to shift these supply chains and trade routes from west to east. Which means that any hopes that, okay, Russia will be humiliated, Russia will leave South Caucasus, and I think we all remember that starting from summer, Pashinyan was telling that Armenia does not live in CSTO, CSTO living South Caucasus, or Armenia is not leaving Russia, Russia is leaving South Caucasus. I believe this all was based on these calculations done by somewhere in Washington, D.C., in Pentagon, I don't know, maybe in CIA or MI6, and hopes that, okay, Ukraine will start its counteroffensive in June 2023, and by the end of 2023, Russia will be finished militarily, at least in Ukraine. And Armenia thought, okay, if Russia is going to be finished militarily in Ukraine, then Russia will be finished in South Caucasus, then we should prepare ourselves for Russia-free South Caucasus, which means that we should come close to the West, and trying to use this close relation with the West somehow to protect ourselves from Azerbaijan and Turkey, and the price is to give up Nagorno-Karabakh. All this apparently was fairy tale or strategic miscalculations, and I believe now Armenian government understands that, okay, Russia probably is not going to leave South Caucasus, and Russia is very angry, and if by the end of 2024 the conflict in Ukraine will be frozen for whatever reasons, then Russia will have much more resources to deal with other areas, including South Caucasus. And at that time, Russia may come to South Caucasus and say, okay, guys, now it's time to pay your debts. Who were criticizing Russia, who were telling things that Russia is leaving South Caucasus, that Russia is bad, Russia is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, now come and it will be very hard times for you. Like somehow to alleviate these potential harsh times, let's put this way. I think Pashinyan decided that, okay, he at least had to try somehow to repair relation with Russia.
So you think that this will also apply to security? Because this week we also saw the same day like that Pashinyan was in St. Petersburg saying, yeah, we're gonna take the presidency of this alliance and we're gonna sort of improve it. I believe it was Javier Colomina or some NATO official who said that we see that Armenia is taking strong steps to I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he said that Armenia is taking steps to move away from Russia and move closer to NATO, and we welcome that sentiment. Do you think that this was basically a friendly, maybe a friendly reminder from NATO to Pashinyan about his moves, or is there some kind of an agreement between everyone that economically Armenia will stay with Russia, but militarily and security-wise, they will go their own ways?
First of all, I will not put too much importance to what this NATO official said. And second, I'm looking into facts. Facts are very clear. A Russian military base is in Armenia, and there is even no discussions in the government, slightly discussions, that Armenia may think about starting the process to withdraw Russian military base from Armenia. Not to actually withdraw, but even no one speaks that Armenia should start the process. Russian border troops are deployed along Armenia-Turkey and Armenia-Iran borders. And again, no discussions that Armenia is going to annul or cancel the 1992 agreement on deployment of Russian border troops in Armenia. Russian troops are in Syunik, and I never heard that even one Russian soldier left Syunik in the last 6 months when all this stuff about criticizing Russia, boycotting CIS, CSTO happens. And so, yes, we are not buying weapons from Russia, but frankly speaking, no one is buying now weapons from Russia because Russia itself is buying weapons from Iran, from North Korea, probably from other places. So, yes, now we are buying weapons from India. We are trying to do something with France, but I don't believe that this means that we are canceling our security partnership with Russia because, again, Russian military base is in Armenia. Russian border troops are deployed in Armenia, and Russian troops, not peacekeepers, but Russian troops are deployed in Syunik. Few Russian troops are deployed in Ararat region, in
Benyamin,
village of the Yeras.
Sergei Lavrov also expressed this concern in an interview with TASS, I think, just a couple of days ago.
Yes, Sergei Lavrov said this, and Russian ambassador Mr. Kopyrkin, who not yesterday, maybe like in late December, he gave a large interview to public television.
Yeah.
I'm speaking about Russian ambassador to Armenia, Mr. Sergei Kopyrkin. He also said, yes, we believe that strategic decision was made in Armenia to make a U-turn. And Lavrov said that, yes, Armenia thinking about giving up on Russian alliance based not on support from the West, but some vague promises from the West.
Right.
Frankly speaking, I'm not sure what they are speaking about and based on what, but facts on the ground shows us that no concrete action have been made. Even on CSTO, yes, Pashinyan does not go to CSTO summits. Yes, Armenia fired or called back its ambassador and did not appoint a new ambassador to CSTO. But still, de jure, Armenia is a CSTO member state, and we saw that the CSTO Secretary General came to Armenia just recently, brought all the decisions which were accepted in November 2023 CSTO summit, which was boycotted by Pashinyan. And there was no statement from our Armenian officials that Armenia is not going to join these decisions, while decisions at CSTO should be appointed by consensus. Yes, there is options there that if one country is not there, at least the decision still can be approved by consensus. But later, this country should join. And I never heard from CSTO officials that any decision which was made in November 2023 CSTO summit in Belarus will not come into force because Armenia declined to join. So again, there are a lot of rhetoric, there are a lot of statements, a lot of discussions, but as of now, I mean late December 2023. Again, the situation is changing very rapidly, and theoretically on January 7, 2024, Pashinyan may state that, okay, we are starting our official process of withdrawing from CSTO. No one can exclude this. But as of now, I don't see any tangible, concrete actions to change or decrease Armenia-Russia security partnership.
All right. For now, let's wrap up our topics here. And as this is the last show of 2023, let's do a review and outlook like we did about a year ago for our January 1st, 2023 show. That was episode 197, and we have a link in the show notes. In that show, we looked back over 2022, and we each made one high, one medium, and one low probability prediction for 2023. Hovik, what were your predictions and how did they go?
Yeah, I'm generally, I think people say more pragmatic or even more pessimistic, but even my most pessimistic predictions could not predict what would happen this year, could not foresee. And we're talking here in lighthearted manner, but in reality, 2023 was a very tragic year for Armenians. So for the record, my predictions were that there would be a high probability there would be an escalation in Artsakh between Azerbaijan. As a medium level prediction, I predicted that Pashinyan's motorcade will grow. And I have this tendency
Did that happen?
Yes, I wish this was the worst thing that happened in 2023. But yes, I count every time I see footage of his motorcade, I count the number of cars. And the latest one in Gyumri was about 15 plus. So that's definitely more than what's in the past. I also predicted that there would be very low likelihood that Pashinyan would be tried for treason. And unfortunately, I was right on that one again.
Well, so there was a Nagorno-Karabakh escalation. You were right on that one. The motorcade grew, and yeah, I guess we can say that low probability means that you were right. So you're sort of batting 3 for 3 here.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet for that third one.
Right. Benjamin, what were your 3 predictions on for 2023?
I guess I also predicted that there is a high possibility of escalation. I think, but no one, even myself, would imagine that as a result of escalation or as a result of anything, we will have 0 Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh by the end of 2023, and we will have President Aliyev receiving military parade in Stepanakert or playing a soccer game in Stepanakert Stadium. So here, I guess somehow I will say that my predictions were partly true. Escalation, yes, but even me, which usually, like, I'm perceived in Armenia as a more or less pessimist person who speaks only about bad things and make complicated or bad predictions. But unfortunately, in 2023, reality was worse than at least I could imagine. And here I would agree with Hovik that, but probably I think 2023 will be recalled in history. Like, I'm sometimes thinking, okay, let's assume it's 22nd century, and historians or our grandchildren or grandchildren of grandchildren are discussing, okay, what happened, like they're looking into 20th century and 21st century. I don't exclude that the 2023 will be perceived as the most terrible year after 1915.
Yeah.
At least starting from the 20th century, like starting from 1901.
Yeah, actually, for your 50-50 probability, you had said that there will be no big change in Karabakh status. That obviously has sort of changed, although we were arguing whether the legal status has changed or hasn't changed, so that is a little unknown. For my 3 predictions, I had said that there was a high probability that the war in Ukraine would find a political resolution. That did not happen, so I was wrong on that. The 50-50 chance, I'd said that there might be a power shuffle in the Kremlin and that the defense minister and maybe some other military types would lose their positions. That didn't happen. Although, interestingly enough, we should note that in June, we had the Prigozhin putsch attempt against Moscow, where the Wagner group marched on Moscow, if you recall. And my final prediction, I had said that there was, in any kind of a power struggle like that, there would be a low likelihood that Putin might lose the presidency. Well, with the Wagner opera in June, Putin dealt with that whole thing in about 36 hours, and Prigozhin went off to Belarus, and the Wagner group was disbanded. And a couple of months later, of course, Prigozhin and the entire Wagner leadership were killed in a, quote unquote, helicopter accident. So maybe kind of like Hovik, I can salvage my dismal prediction record by claiming that I was right that Putin did not lose the presidency in some kind of a putsch attempt. So theoretically, I'm a 0 for 3 for my 2023 predictions. Let's look at 2024. Who wants to go first? Should I go first?
I would give the privilege either to you or Hovik as a host.
Go first,
I'll give Hovik a little more time to think about his. So for my high probability, Armenia is going to be in a pretty tough place in 2024. The government is trying to pivot its security orientation towards the West, like we just talked, but Russia can absolutely tank the Armenian economy. Given the past 3 years of experience, I have no confidence that Pashinyan and company know how to make good decisions for Armenia. So I think there's an unfortunate possibility of a really bumpy economic year ahead. So my prediction, my high probability prediction, is that there's a good chance of the Armenian real estate sector experiencing a serious decline in 2024, maybe a 20% decline. My 50-50 prediction is that in November of 2024, we may see Trump elected president of the United States again. So let's see if that happens. And then for my low probability prediction, I think there's a small chance that the Israeli-Gaza mess will expand and engulf more regional powers. Most of them are trying pretty hard to stay out of it, but I have little confidence that Netanyahu, who is trying to save his career and legacy at the expense of the lives of tens of thousands of Palestinians, will not cross the red lines of countries like Turkey, Egypt, Iran, and expand the disaster zone. So, for example, why are Turkey and Egypt, who are not the greatest friends generally, suddenly talking defense cooperation? Maybe it's because they have a common concern for the plight of the Palestinians, and perhaps they are drawing up their red lines for Netanyahu. But as soon as they do, I think Netanyahu will cross it. So there's a possibility, a small chance, that the conflict may expand more regionally. Benjamin, what are you thinking?
Okay, so high probability. I believe that there is a high probability that some document will be signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan in 2024, which de jure may be called a peace agreement, but this will not include anything about these more problematic issues like delimitation, demarcation, routes, connections, and etc. And even something will be signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but tensions will remain, and Azerbaijan at least will threaten to use military force to put pressure on Armenia and to get more favorable concessions on these issues. On 50-50 on global politics, I believe that there is a 50% chance that by the end of 2024, somehow conflict in Ukraine will be frozen. I'm not using the term will be solved because it's very challenging even to understand what the settlement means. But probably 50-50 that by the end of 2024, the active phase of Russia-Ukraine war will end and somehow we will have some sort of frozen conflict. I'm not sure
Do you
about
mean to say there might
borderlines.
be some kind of a political resolution that freezes the
Not
conflict?
political resolution, but at least some sort of like ceasefire, let's put it this way.
Okay.
Not political resolution, but ceasefire, which will freeze the conflict. Of course, there could be some shootings or low intensity escalations, but large-scale war, which we see starting from February 2022, there is a 50% chance that in December 2024, we will have some sort of ceasefire agreement, let's put it this way, or maybe, I don't know, something similar what happened in Minsk in February 2015, which effectively froze the conflict for 7 years until February 2022.
Okay.
And for low probability, I think that there are few chances, but less than 50% definitely, that for whatever conditions, some Armenians will decide to come back to Nagorno-Karabakh, but not under whatever conditions, but without any political status, let's put it this way, that some Armenians will decide to come back to Nagorno-Karabakh without even autonomy for Nagorno-Karabakh. I mentioned that Russia is, and also Europe is interested that at least several thousand Armenians will go there. As far as I understand, Russia will try to make some steps towards the direction, but probability is quite low.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see how that pans out in 2024. Hovik, what are your 3 predictions?
So to continue Benjamin's, I definitely think that Aliyev and Pashinyan will try to pretend some kind of a peace treaty will be enforced, but I don't think that will mean anything, and there will be significant continued tensions, including potentially military escalation, at least until the capture of the so-called enclaves that Aliyev is talking about. And as a result, my 50-50 prediction would be that in order to maintain his power in Armenia, Pashinyan would need to do much more in terms of controlling the opposition, and he will go into sort of a full dictator mode and try to, lock up his opponents and interrupt their functioning in any way possible. And I predict that the EU and Western communities will pretend not to see anything happening. And as a low prediction, and I have to say sadly, I hope, but I think that less than 50% chance that the Armenian opposition will finally figure out a formula for taking power, although it remains to be seen what they can do, what can be done, when they take power after all of these losses. But I see it as a low-level probability that there is a power change and Pashinyan flies off to some European country to change his identity and live as a recluse the rest of his life, while Armenia suffers, the results of his policies.
Wow. Okay. All right. We're going to leave it there for today. And it's kind of hard to wish Happy New Year to everyone, but on that tone, Hovik. But okay, well, let's just wish that 2024 is a better year for Armenians around the world than 2023 was. And we look forward to continuing our podcasts and our stimulating interactions with our audience, our listeners around the world. Thank you, Benyamin, for joining us throughout the year.
Yeah. And thank you to our listeners, too, who chose to stick with us for our depressing podcast. But I think that, we're trying to present the situation as is without any sugarcoating and without any agenda of our own other than, what we've discussed and what we've been very open about. But yes, we hope that all our predictions are wrong. But in reality, we need a new way for Armenians to unite and to be able to withstand all of these challenges that are going to come across 2024.
Let me also join to your wishes, Asbed. Definitely, let's wish that 2024 should be, or let's hope it will be, better for Armenians than 2023, and I will say even for entire world, because in many countries, it's not, yes, in 2023, we passed through very terrible events, but there were a lot of other countries who are suffering. And at the end, I would like to thank you, Asbed, and you, Hovik, for what you are doing, because your shows, these weekly reviews and other podcasts, I believe they are very useful, especially to send some more or less realistic assessments to the English-speaking Armenian audience in diaspora. And I know that you all are busy persons. You are doing this without any personal gains or profits, just providing your time and your resources, and this is really very, very much appreciated.
Thank you, Benyamin. We'll talk to you in 2024.
Bye-bye.
That was our Week in Review show recorded on December 29, 2023. We've been talking with Dr. Benyamin Poghosyan, who is a senior fellow at APRI Armenia, a Yerevan-based think tank. He's also the chairman of the Center for Political and Economic Strategic Studies.
I'm Hovik Manucharyan.
And I'm Asbed Bedrossian.
Please find us on social media and follow us everywhere you get your Armenian news. The links are in the show notes. We wish you a wonderful year ahead.